Hello, dear students. Today we are going to study a new chapter. Chapter number 3, How I Taught My Grandmother to Read. It's a story written by Sudha Murthy, an Indian author. She is an author and an educator, and she writes in both Kannada and English. Her stories uphold positive human values like simple living and charity. And some of her well known works are The Serpent's Revenge, The Day I Stopped Drinking Milk, and Grandma's Bag of Stories. Dear students, we all are fortunate because we can study. We have all the facilities for study. But there was a time, even though you liked to study, there was no possibility to study. But the situation has changed. We have all the facilities, all the possibilities for studying and learning knowledge. Right now, we are in a very dangerous situation of coronavirus. But even then, we are able to study. We have the facilities like online classes, YouTube channel, and many other possibilities. And today in this class, we are going to see a grandmother who wished to study, but unfortunately, she couldn't study due to many reasons. Let us begin the story. When I was a girl of about 12, I used to stay in a village in North Karnataka with my grandparents. In those days, the transport system was not very good, so we used to get the morning paper only in the afternoon. All of us would wait eagerly for the bus, which used to come with the papers, weekly magazines, and the post. So the story is beginning like this. The writer or the narrator of the story just reminding an incident which happened in her past life, in her childhood, and she was just 12 years old during that time, and she lived in a village, and there was no good transport system, so they used to get the daily newspaper by afternoon, and they eagerly waited for this bus to come with the papers, weekly magazines, and the post, and etc. The story is taking place in a village in North Karnataka. At that time, Triveni was a very popular writer in the Kannada language. One of her novels called Kashiyatra was appearing as a serial in the Kannada weekly Karmavira at the time. My grandmother, Krishtaka, never went to school, so she could not read. Every Wednesday, Karmavira would come, and I would read the next episode of Kashiyatra to her. During those days, there was one popular writer called Triveni, and one of her novels called Kashiyatra was coming in the weekly magazine called Karmavira, and it was coming on every Wednesday. And the problem is that grandmother could not read because she never went to school, so she cannot read or write. So what this small girl did, she read for her. She was reading the episodes of Kashiyatra for her grandmother. During that time, she would forget all her work and listen with the greatest concentration. Later, she could repeat the entire text by heart. After hearing what happened next in Kashiyatra, she would join her friends at the temple courtyard, where the children would also gather to play hide and seek. She would discuss the latest episode with her friends. So the granddaughter, was reading the story for her grandmother, and she could listen it very concentratively, and she forgot all other things. She fully focused on this story, and she learned this story also within one reading. Thereafter, grandmother used to go to her friends and shared the story of Kashiyatra with them. Once I went for a wedding with my cousins to the neighboring village. In those days, a wedding was a great event. We enjoyed ourselves thoroughly. We would eat and play endlessly, savoring the freedom because all the elders were busy. I went for a couple of days but ended up staying for a week. One day, the little girl had gone for a marriage in the neighboring village, and she was enjoying her days there. And what happened is that she went for just 1 or 2 days, but she stayed there a week. During this time, there was no one to read the story of Kashiyatra for grandmother. When I came back to my village, I found my grandmother in tears. I was surprised, for I had never seen her cry even in the most difficult situations. What had happened? I was worried. Ava, is everything all right? Are you okay? I used to call her Ava, which means mother in Kannada. She nodded but did not reply. I did not understand and forgot about it. In the night, after dinner, we were sleeping in the open terrace of the house. It was a summer night and there was a full moon. When the child came back after the marriage, she noticed that uh, grandmother was disappointed. The grandmother was crying and she was surprised. She asked the reason, but grandmother did not say anything. Later that day night, grandmother came to the child and sat near to her. Ava came and sat next to me. Her affectionate hands touched my forehead. I realized she wanted to speak. I asked her, "What is the matter?" When I was a young girl, I lost my mother. There was nobody to look after and guide me. My father was a busy man and got married again. In those days, people never considered education essential for girls, so I never went to school. I got married very young and had children. I became very busy. Later, I had grandchildren and always felt so happy cooking and feeding all of you. At times, at times, I used to regret not going to school, so I made sure that my children and grandchildren studied well. Grandmother shared her life story to the grandchild. Grandmother lost her mother at a very young age, and the father was a busy man, and father got married again. In those days, the people never considered education as very important for the girls. So, what happened? Our grandmother also could not go to school. Later, she got married and she got children and grandchildren, and she was totally becoming a mother and a grandmother. She was cooking for them, she was preparing food for them, and she was enjoying that. And sometimes she was feeling very sad about that she could not go to school. So, what she did, she made sure that her children and grandchildren surely had gone to school. I could not understand why my 62-year-old grandmother was telling me, a 12-year-old, the story of her life in the middle of the night. But I knew I loved her immensely, and there had to be some reason why she was talking to me. I looked at her face. It was unhappy, and her eyes were filled with tears. She was a good looking lady who was usually always smiling. While grandmother was sharing her story, she was crying. Even today, I cannot forget the worried expression on her face. I leaned forward and held her hand. Ava, don't cry. What is the matter? Can I help you in any way? Yes, I need your help. You know, when you were away, Karmavira came as usual. I opened the magazine. I saw the picture that accompanies the story of Kashiyatra, but I could not understand anything that was written. Many times I rubbed my hands over the pages, wishing they could understand what was written. But I knew it was not possible. If only I were educated enough. I waited eagerly for you to return. I felt you would come early and read for me. I even thought of going to the village and asking you to read for me. I could have asked somebody in this village, but I was too embarrassed to do so. I felt so very dependent and helpless. We are well off, but what use is money when I cannot be independent? So here, grandmother is revealing the reason for her sadness. She could not read anything, and she is feeling dependent. While the grandchild was away, grandchild had gone for marriage. Karmavira came as usual, and she was eagerly waiting to read the Kashiyatra, the story of Kashiyatra, and she could not. She was turning the pages one by one, but she could not understand anything. Even she rubbed her hands over the pages, and she was thinking that if my hands could understand what is written over there, and it is not going to be possible. And what she needs is that she wants to study. She wants to study to read. I didn't know what to answer. Ava continued. I have decided to learn the Kannada alphabet from tomorrow onwards. I will work very hard. I want to be independent. Ava, at this age of 62, you want to learn the alphabet? All your hair is grey. Your hands are wrinkled. You wear spectacles. And you work so much in the kitchen. But she just smiled. For a good cause, if you are determined, you can overcome any obstacle. I will work harder than anybody else, but I will do it. For learning, age is no limit. So here we can see a determined grandmother. She wants to study. That's why she says that for a good cause, if you're determined, you can overcome any obstacles. This is a very good message given by the grandmother. If you are really focused, if you're really determined, then we can overcome any obstacles, any problems. And the next day onwards, grandmother started to study. The next day onwards, I started my tuition. Ava was a wonderful student. The amount of homework she did was amazing. She would read, repeat, write, and recite. I was her only teacher, and she was my first student. Little did I know then that one day I would become a teacher of computer science and teach hundreds of students. So, next day onwards, the little child started to teach grandmother how to read Kannada, the alphabets, and later she became a computer teacher. Then the Dasara festival came as usual. My grandmother called me to the place of worship and made me sit on a stool. She gave me a gift. It was a length of fabric to be tailored into a dress. Then she did something unusual. She bent down and touched my feet. I was surprised and taken aback. Elders never touch the feet of youngsters. We only touch the feet of gods we worship, and that of our elders and teachers. We consider it a mark of respect. So, when Dasara came, grandmother took the grandchild to a place, the place of worship, and made the little child to sit on a stool. And thereafter, grandmother touched on the feet of grandchild, and she became very upset. She got surprised because we know that elders will never touch the feet of youngsters to get the blessings. Usually, youngsters touch the feet of elders and get the blessings, and touch the feet of God and teachers, and it is to show respect towards them. And here, grandmother touched the feet of this little child and gave a gift, a length of fabric. She said, I am touching the feet of a teacher, not my granddaughter. A teacher who taught me so well and with so much affection that I can now read any novel confidently. Now I am independent. It is my duty to respect a teacher. Is it not written in our scriptures that a teacher should be respected irrespective of age? I touched her feet in return and gave my gift to my first student. It was the novel Kashiyatra by Triveni. I knew then that my student had passed with flying colors. Grandmother said that this is the duty of a student to respect their teacher. Then the grandchild touched the feet of grandmother also and gave a gift, the novel Kashiyatra, to grandmother. This is the story. I hope the students understood the story very well. I have explained very briefly. And the language of this story is very easy. So I request you all to read the chapter very well. It's a very simple and beautiful story. Have a nice day. God bless you all.